Hello, everyone. This is Alex Schiffer, the Missouri beat writer for the Kansas City Star. After an off week, we are back with a Mizzou podcast for you all. I'm alongside Blair Kerkhoff, and we have a lot to dive into today. We'll get into Mizzou's win over Memphis and its upcoming game against Kentucky on the football field, Jontay Porter's devastating ACL injury and where the basketball team goes from here. And maybe we'll even talk a little Asia Blackwell and see what Blair's women's basketball knowledge is like. And I'm owed a trivia question from him. So let's get going. What's going on, Blair?
Alex, how you doing, my friend?
I had my first Chiefs game on Sunday, and it was quite memorable, as I'm sure you all know.
Yeah, I saw your tweet from Arrowhead, and it looked like you had decent seats.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I spent most of my $110 writing off my phone because of the Jontay news, but it was a pretty good game. I have a question for you. You know, I tweeted all you guys saying that I would trade beer for warmth in the press box, and that tweet got favorited but never responded to. So what do I need to do to spice up my offer next time?
Let's see. The beer in the press box thing probably isn't going to happen. At least not from the outside. You've got to be one of those sweet holders to get into one of those taps in the press box. But you know, let me know a little bit in advance, and we'll see what we can do to get you in there. Was it really that cold sitting in the stands?
It wasn't so much the temperature as much the temperature on my hands while I was trying to type. So the rest of my body was cold enough, but my hands wanted to fall off.
And typing probably on your phone, as I imagine.
Yes, exactly. Thank God for there being a Google Docs app. So I guess we can start with Sunday's news. Well, let's go into football later, but Jontay Porter out for the season for Missouri. We had the scoop on that. Torn ACL and MCL in his right knee in the scrimmage against Southern Illinois. Absolutely devastating blow for Conzo Martin. It's obviously last year they lost his brother Michael Porter to back surgery early in the season, and they were planning to do a ton with Jontay this year in terms of running the offense through him, using him as a point guard. He was just such a dynamic player, and now you know it's really tough to figure out what Missouri does from here because they have 9 available scholarship guys right now. KJ Santos is on the shelf with a fractured foot. Maybe they get the 2 Smith transfers eligible, but those guys are guards. I had a story yesterday in the paper about where Missouri goes from here, and they were more educated guesses than answers. I'm just curious about your takeaways from the whole thing.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, you did have the scoop on that, and that was fantastic. And that's people were maybe wondering what you were doing, typing in the seats at Arrowhead. That's what you were typing. So that's such a good deal. And so the news comes out, and everybody's reaction in the press box at Arrowhead was just face palm. It was just like, really, this can't be true. Not just for what it means to Tigers basketball, and it means a lot. I mean, we'll talk about that, but also the whole Porter family and what they've had to deal with in terms of injuries, not only to the Porter guys, but to the Porter gals as well, right? I mean, both of the daughters have had to deal with serious injuries that curtailed careers, and Michael last year, and now Jontay, and he made the decision to return this season, which wasn't a lighthearted decision. He had some serious considerations here for turning pro. Decides to come back, and then this happens. So it was the reaction around all of basketball, is one of a lot of sympathy toward him and the family, and I was really looking forward to seeing him play this year. He was, what did he average? 9'9" and then 6'8", something like that a year ago.
Yes.
But he was a guy you could see making that jump to, I don't know, maybe 15, 16, and 9 or 10, and being the guy that they built their team around, built their offense around, and and now we're just not going to see it. And let's throw this out here too. This is a year-long recovery. This isn't. Don't expect to see him like we talked about Michael Porter all last year. Maybe at the end of the season, there's not going to be any of that for Jontay. This is a 12-month recovery period, and then he'll have some more decisions to make in his for his future at the end of that process. When he comes back, he won't be exactly ready to go for basketball. It's going to take some time for him to return from this. So I don't know what it means for his basketball future. Just for the immediate Missouri basketball future, it's terrible news.
Yeah, I actually had looked at Jontay as an All-American candidate this year, just because, as you said, I think he could have easily averaged a double-double. And then he is just such a block and assist machine some games where I think he would have been able to have the numbers to flirt with the triple-double. I don't think a quadruple-double is practical on the college level, but just would have had the across-the-board stats to really warrant consideration. And as you were saying, I called one NBA scout in the car while I first got tipped off, and the guy comes out of a meeting, goes, I got 2 minutes, what do you want? I said, this stays here. Jontay Porter tore his ACL, I'm about to break it. What do you think of that? And he said, Jontay Porter came back to school for a reason, whether it was for not wanting the NBA lifestyle yet or something to work on his game. He came back for a reason, and now he doesn't have a chance to really address that reason. So I wonder if he comes back for a third year. And the thing about Jontay that he has the advantage of is that he was originally looked at as a 2-year player in college when he was first getting recruited in high school. He was the youngest player, one of them, in college basketball last year. He doesn't turn 19 until next month. So technically, another year in college won't cost him really anything on the age spectrum with NBA teams. But I just think that if you're Jontay, some people have compared him to Nick Bosa, the Ohio State defensive end, and just that he got hurt, he's going to be a top NFL pick. Withdraw from school, invest in rehab, and show people what you're doing on film before the injury, and try to sell that to pro teams and everything. And I wouldn't blame him if he were to go that route because, he'll get the best medical attention in the NBA, and it's a weaker NBA draft, so I still think he could go in the first round, even if it's late first round. And the whole thing is just, as you said, devastating for Missouri, but I don't think you can blame him if he doesn't come back.
No, you don't. You wouldn't. I mean, it's this. But he. I'll go back. He's got to, he'll have a decision to make whether to go enter the draft then or in 2020. And we'll. I couldn't tell you what the draft's going to look like then, but will he want to play a year, maybe just an abbreviated year of college basketball before entering the pros? I wonder what the advice would be at that point. I don't know. It's a devastating injury to be sure, and like I said, the Porters have had to deal with this in many times in the family's history.
Yeah, looking at Mizzou basketball now in the immediate future, I had looked at them this year as a bubble team and kind of go from there. Around 20 wins, see what their resume looks like and how they do in the SEC and where the wins come from as to which side they fall of it on. But now, it's and again, there's so much we don't know, but some quick takeaways from it. Some people have suggested because Missouri only has really 3 true front court players in Mitchell Smith, Reed Nico, and Jeremiah Tillman. I think Jeremiah Tillman staying out of foul trouble now is absolutely imperative to Missouri to keep him on the floor as much as they can. He only averaged 4.1 rebounds last year. Jontay had so much more because he didn't get foul trouble, but that could have easily been Jeremiah. So I think it's paramount for him to stay on the floor this year because they're going to need as much as they can out of him. And some have said about, maybe Missouri goes to like a 4-out, 1-in type of deal like Frank Hates used in his last season in the Big 12, his first at Missouri. And my whole argument against that is I think if this injury happened a year ago and they still had Jordan Barnett and Cassius Robertson, on the team that might have worked. Because that team, even though they only had Ricardo Ratliff, I mean, Marcus Denman, Kim English, and Phil Pressey and Michael Dixon were all very high-level shooters and passers, so where that system was able to work for them. I mean, Missouri's got Jordan Geist, who shot 36% from three last year, and that's really it. So I don't really think they're built for that personnel. I think the goal this year is if they can make it to the NIT, that's a big deal. I think if they were to somehow make the NCAA tournament, Konzo Martin is the National Coach of the Year. And, I mean, people have talked about getting the Smiths. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say they're going to have to obviously change. The timing of this is so unfortunate because just as it was a year ago with Michael, the Missouri coaches have planned a system. They have coached a system. They knew how they wanted to play, and obviously Jontay was going to be the centerpiece of that. And it's not like there is another player on the roster who just slides up into that role. It's, as you suggested, they're going to just have to change the way they approach the game, and and they're doing it with a couple weeks to go before the first game, which is not a lot of time. And you're right. I saw that reference to the 2012 Tigers and maybe thinking along those lines. And look, in Tillman, they've got a guy who would, with a little more seasoning, a little more polish, could be a better version of who the Tigers had in the middle in 2012. But this team isn't. There's too much unproven accuracy on this team. We just don't know how good the shooters we're going to have. But we know experience-wise that team had a lot of it. This team doesn't. And so I just think, to me, the player whose role changes is Kevin Puryear, right? Puryear's going to have to, he's going to, depending on whether they go with a 4-5 with him and or do they play small with him? I don't know, but I think they're going to have to rely on him more than maybe they were planning on doing heading into this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that because Jontay was such a dynamic player, you can't really – there's not one player you point to and say he's able to kind of make up for his absence. And I think the offense you're going to be missing from Jontay has to be all hands on deck. The rebounding, I think, has to be all hands on deck. I mean, I think you're going to see Puryear – and Puryear averaged double-doubles under Kim Anderson's team. I mean – a lot of games. Obviously those teams weren't doing much winning, but it does show that he could rebound at a high level in the college game when needed. So I think that you're going to see him down low a lot trying to help out Tillman. And, I mean, really, we don't know what to make out of KJ Santos. He's hurt right now, and it seems like he is the full, no one knows what to expect from him. I had NBA people tell me that the kid can be a pro if he puts it all together. I've had other people tell me Konzo made a mistake offering him. So we need to see what he can do before we can really talk about him. And everyone keeps talking about this.
That's quite a range there.
It is a gigantic range. That's why I thought it was worth bringing up.
Yeah.
But and even with the Smiths, I don't know what to make. The NCAA, I'm curious for your take on this because I've had no one seems to know what the NCAA could rule on either of the Smiths. Mark Smith left Illinois. It seems like it wasn't a good fit for him there. And Drew Smith obviously left Evansville from a coaching change. And I've had some people tell me that I trust and know the college game and the NCAA is working. Some say Drew Smith is the one that has absolutely no case because he left out of a coaching change. Mark Smith, Illinois landed a 5-star recruit out of Chicago, Io DeSunmo at the point guard spot. He could talk about being recruited over or pushed out maybe, and Illinois doesn't want a bad look, and maybe they'll let it slide. But Mizzou plays Illinois every year, so I could also see Illinois saying absolutely not. I truly, if you put a gun to my head, Blair, and said, give me your best guess, and if you're wrong, you're done, I'd start packing my bags up to heaven because I have no idea what to make of the NCAA and the cases the Smiths have.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure the justification for what might be an exception to the transfer rules here. I mean, they're pretty cut and dry. If you transfer rules are transfer rules. You sit out if unless you transfer a semester, and then you sit out a semester. If you transfer at the end of a year, you sit out a year. I don't know where the wiggle room is for either one. So it would be nice and expedient if those weren't in play, but they are. So I don't see where they're going to get some relief on this.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Blake Kerkhoff transferred out of Mizzou to NC State. Its semester is eligible for the full year now. It seems like the NCAA is kind of handing a little more of these waivers out. Someone at Braxton Key at Virginia just got eligible yesterday immediately from Alabama. So no one knows what to expect with that. But, I think the only, I don't know how much getting either one of them would change the forecast for the season because they have guards. We already knew that. And you're getting some more experience, which this team is lacking. And you're getting maybe that can help offset some of the scoring. But I just think that Konzo's going to have to play a lot of small ball because of the lack of bigs he has. And there's going to be games where this team's outmatched in the post, and they have to figure out something with it.
Yeah, and just the player rotation itself would be, it would be helpful to have more there. Who's third, fourth guy off the bench, depending on how deep the rotation goes for Missouri. But I'm with you. I think that expectations for me with Missouri have changed from a borderline NCAA team to not an NCAA team. I think that this was, we're looking at maybe anywhere from an 8-9 seed to an 11, and now someone that now a team that will hope to get an NIT home game. Be good enough there. And part of my reasoning is even with Jontay, we were looking at what the coaches have, 9th, 7th, 8th or 9th, something like that. And I think the SEC is going to be really good this year, one of the better conferences in the country, and there are not going to be many places on the schedule where you just take a look and say, yep, there's put a W by that one. It's just not going to be that way in the conference this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think the challenge is, given how loaded the SEC is this year, Mizzou was 9th, and if you look at the preseason poll, I think really 4th through 10th is an absolute toss-up. I think Tennessee, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and Florida are definitely toward the upper part of the conference. But after that, it's really a shakeup as to how everyone finishes. But it definitely, Mizzou picked the wrong year to have an injury like this. And I think the best case scenario for Mizzou is that if both Smiths get denied, they landed Trey Jackson out of Sunrise Christian in Wichita, who's like a Jontay Mizzou staff wants him to play the 1 through 5 and thinks he's exactly what they want for positionless basketball. I think this year the biggest thing that it could turn into is a transition year for next season when you do get both Smiths, you get some help from the recruits, maybe a grad transfer, a JUCO guy or something with that last scholarship, and really go all in next season when you have probably Tillman back for his junior year, both Smiths, a year of experience for Torrance Watson and Javon Pickett and guys like that, and really just try to make this season go toward the next one as much as they can.
You think fans will have patience with that and in the what have you done for me lately approach? Maybe with the Porter injury, this changes people's at least their mindset a little bit on what to expect from this year's team. Maybe they'll be pleasantly surprised, but I'm thinking. This needs to be a try-hard team. Show a lot of effort, play a lot of really good defense, win in areas that show a lot of determination, hustle, that sort of thing, and then sort of let the chips fall where they may offensively, and maybe you'll pull out a couple of wins that you might not expect. But I think in the end, this is just going to be a team that will fall short of where fans had hoped. Going into the season with a healthy roster.
Yeah, you talked about fan patience. I was saying something the other day. Konzo just has to win 11 games this year to beat anything Kim Anderson had in his 3 years. And I think even a 500 season, people can't really complain about given what Cuonzo did last year without Michael Porter Jr. And I think part of the problem is that, because Cuonzo kind of hitched his wagon onto the Porters when he got the job here, it's almost like he's kind of set himself up for disappointment. You know what I mean? Like they get the top recruit in the nation last year. He gets hurt. Obviously, Cuonzo can't control that. But he gets the top recruit. They get out in the first round, and obviously they had depth issues and injuries and whatnot. But that was underwhelming given what it was supposed to be when they went into the season. And this year's going to be the same way. And obviously that, again, Cuonzo has nothing to do with back surgery or the ACL, but I think that's part of the problem of what he signed up for, is that people were expecting it to be a gigantic first couple seasons, and then it would be more of a transition, and now you're starting to see more signs of the rebuild here.
Yeah, well, I think when the Porters were signed, sealed, delivered, the idea at the time was to get 3 seasons out of them, right? 1 from Michael and 2 from Jontay, and they're going to end up with possibly just 1 and a handful of games. So with 1 season in the books, they went from a last place team to an NCAA tournament team, and you can call last year, and it was a first round bounce out, and you can call that disappointing. But I think the 30,000 foot view of that was a heck of a job, with under the circumstances, to beat Tennessee, to beat Kentucky, to have the regular season that Missouri ended up having without a first round draft pick available to them for all but the last handful of games. I think that maybe I'm looking at it a little too optimistically, but I think when you consider everything that worked against Missouri after it looked like they had everything in place, that ended up being a successful year for the Tigers. And now they're faced with again, they're going to have to, I think, overachieve to satisfy a lot of the fan base this year.
No, I agree completely. I think Cuonzo's coaching job was kind of overshadowed nationally last year because Chris Holtmann had an unbelievable year. I mean, Rick Barnes' team was picked in the stellar, and they won the whole thing.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree completely on it. I think Cuonzo would have gotten a lot more recognition had stints like that not happened.
Yep, no doubt. Hey, it's Blair Kerkhoff, and if you're listening to this, you love Kansas City sports, whether it's the Chiefs, Royals, Sporting, Mizzou, KU, or K-State. And no one covers these teams like the Kansas City Star. If you currently subscribe to the paper or have a digital subscription, thank you for your support. And if you don't, here's a great offer. It's called Sports Pass, unlimited digital access to every sports story and video on kansascity.com. And it's just $30 for the first year. It's the best sports value in town, just 8 cents a day or $2.50 a month. You can't beat that. Subscribe now at kansascity.com/sportspass.
Transition over to football. Blowout win for Missouri last week against Memphis. It's a pretty good Memphis team. A lot of people have been saying how the week before Memphis lost a heartbreaker to UCF, and that was more their Super Bowl than Missouri was. And the Tigers caught a break because obviously Darrell Henderson, Memphis tailback, enters the game as the nation's leading rusher. Seems like they never fully said this, but the talk in the press box was his hamstring tightened up early in the game, and that's why he left early. But, I mean, Missouri had that 17-0 run they gave up to Memphis in the second quarter, and then after that it was really just cruise control. I mean, Drew Lock looked like his old self. The receiving core, Albert O had a career day with 3 TDs, 159 yards receiving. Larry Roundtree looked good in the run game. It looked like the Missouri offense we'd seen earlier in the year. And the defense, I mean, did enough. They kind of got, again, I kind of gave them an incomplete just because they didn't have to deal with Henderson in the backfield. But they had 2 interceptions in the secondary, which is something we haven't seen a lot of this year. The pass rush was active, which we hadn't seen a lot of this year. And they were able to get some stops when Missouri needed them to, when they were able to kind of have this thing wrapped up by halftime.
Well, I think if anybody just saw the final score, they'd have thought, well, just a Drew Lock and Missouri offense at its very best, and it was Memphis. It was a non-Power 5 conference opponent that really hadn't, even though they had the disappointing outcome against Central Florida in the rain the previous week, they still hadn't really beaten anybody. So let's just dismiss that as a non-conference win. But I think upon a further examination, you mentioned the 17-0 run. So that made it 21-17, and Missouri faces a 4th and 1 from, you tell me, where was the ball at the 4th and 1 on the
Missouri zone 34.
Yes, I mean that's and Barry Odom decides to go for it, and that's a huge moment in a game that ends up being a blowout. If they don't make it there, no telling how the feeling of this game changes, the confidence of Memphis grows, and who knows what might have unfolded then. But I believe it was they pick up the first down, and like 3 snaps later, it's Missouri's got three more touchdowns, and that just turned everything around. So that game did have a moment of if you're a Missouri fan, it had a moment of biting your nails a little bit and wondering what's going to happen in this game. Is it going to end up a shootout? I mean, is Memphis about to take control of this thing? But all's well and ended well for the Tigers. They did picked up the first down, and then a few moments later that game was well in hand for the Tigers, for Missouri's Tigers.
It's funny you say about the 4th down call, because I was talking to Vahe in the press box when it happened, who based a column around it. Should Missouri go 5-1 the rest of the season or 6-0? You can make a case that 4th down call is kind of where it started, and where the team where Barry Odom bet on his team and they didn't let him down. So yeah. I agree with that completely. I think that call was gigantic. It's funny. I think Barry Odom kind of downplayed it after the game when, with it being kind of a trying time for him, I would have, if it were me and I'm a football coach, I would have taken any question you wanted about the 4th down call, because it really did show him kind of growing as a coach. And I don't know if that's a call he makes last year and his first year for sure.
No, that's right. I think you might play the percentages that way in that case, but I think the percentages favored Missouri this time. When you've got a quarterback who is still being discussed as a first rounder, and you've got the offense that ended up doing what Missouri's offense did in that game, and we've seen it in other games. I think that reduces the risk quotient in that scenario. I'm sure that there is an entire chapter in the playbook devoted to situations like that, and Missouri could have pulled out any number of plays to pick up the first down, and they could have called the right one, and they got it. And while I'm thinking about it, and I know this is apropos to nothing, but how much better does Missouri's win over Purdue look right now? I know you and I were there, and I remember thinking as we were leaving the stadium that night that this is a Purdue team that's absolutely not as bad as its record. They dropped to 3-0 that night, and they were going to start beating some people. And they did that right away, and then they just picked up a monster win on Saturday night against Ohio State. So and just destroyed the Buckeyes. So I remember people being a little disappointed. Missouri had that game in hand and let Purdue get back into it. And then had to win it at the gun with a field goal. But gosh, I mean, what Purdue has done since then has been really, really amazing. And I think we saw the beginning of that night with David Blau and their effort against Mizzou.
No, Barry Odom said today at the press conference, he goes, that win looks very good now, doesn't it? I think Rondell Moore, even though this isn't related to the Missouri beat fully, it has already solidified himself as a freshman All-American. He's ridiculous. Ohio State had absolutely no way how to handle him, and Missouri did a decent job against him now in hindsight. And I kind of wonder with Purdue, if they had David Blau as their quarterback those first 2 games instead of kind of rotating him,
rotating.
what's their record right now? I mean, that he had his coming out party against Missouri, and then he hasn't really looked back since. So, no, I think that win has aged very well for Missouri, and when it comes time, assuming they make a bowl game, I'll do them some favors. For Saturday, Kentucky comes in. It's the best they've been, it looks like, under Mark Stoops, the 12th in the country. I think it's worth noting that Kentucky has had some pretty hot starts before under Stoops, and the second half of the year hasn't exactly been their calling card. But they have Benny Snell, who's probably first-team All-SEC running back this year. Probably leaves early for the NFL. They don't have much of a pass game at all. I mean, I think they threw for 17 yards against Vanderbilt or some ridiculous stat like that.
Completed 3 passes in that game.
Yes, and Missouri's defense has been pretty good against the run. We said earlier how they got a little bit of a pass because of avoiding Darrell Henderson. And Kentucky's defense has really been what's made this team so good. As we said, they're limited on offense, but they are, I think, 12th in the country in total defense. They are top 2 in the conference in total defense, scoring defense, rushing defense, passing defense. They're really good at keeping teams from scoring out of the red zone. Josh Allen, their linebacker, looks like an All-American. He's got 8 sacks already. He's all over the field. And the knock on Missouri has been that they don't do as well against good defense. The same thing with with Drew Lock. I was telling Vahe at the Memphis game, I said, and he didn't use this in his column, so I'm not totally offended, and maybe you do if it's warranted on Saturday, but I feel like Kentucky and Florida were the 2 teams before the beginning of the year that we said those should be wins for Missouri, but we haven't seen them yet. Let's see what it looks like. And now they're both good. Barry Odom had a chance to beat Georgia, didn't do it. South Carolina isn't as good of a team, but he whiffed that. I feel like these are, with the way the schedule is looking the rest of the year, these are Odom's 2 chances and Drew Lock's 2 chances to get a win against a ranked team, silence the doubters, and really put Missouri in a chance to finish with 8 or 9 wins for the rest of the season.
Well, no doubt about that. I mean, when you look at the schedule and you're back in the preseason, I think in the first half of the season you saw a couple of games that looked like they would be kind of toss-up games that would help define the season, and those were at Purdue and at South Carolina. Maybe before the season began, you might have been happy with a split in those games, which is what happened. But the fact that you once you win the first one, you want to sweep them, right? And want to feel much better about about the rest of the season. It didn't happen. The South Carolina game was a complete giveaway for the Tigers, and a game they absolutely shouldn't have lost. So I look at the remaining schedule and I see the same things in the 2 opponents that you've identified, Kentucky and Florida, as look, they're ranked. They're better they're obviously way better in the standings right now than Mizzou, which is looking for its first conference victory, and Kentucky and Florida, along with Georgia, are all 4-1. So, but it's odd that you see an unranked team favored by as much as Missouri is against a team that's, what are they, 12th or 10, whatever they are.
They're 12th, yeah.
12th. I mean, that's kind of eye-opening. It's really eye-opening to see Missouri ranked or favored by 6 over a touchdown over a team that's ranked so far ahead of them. But I think that's what I think that's an accurate perception. With Missouri playing at home, with the strengths that Missouri has, matched up against Kentucky strengths, I think home field makes a difference here, and I think this is. If we always come up with themes and try to frame football games, and that's exactly what this is. It's the Drew Lock opportunity game, the one that he needs to, and Missouri needs to really take full advantage of. There is an opportunity here to really make a statement. I don't want to take it back into the Heisman conversation. That's not impossible, but I think the Heisman's been locked up by Tua at Alabama, but to be part of the conversation, maybe get an invite to New York. I think with if Missouri finishes strong and Lock's numbers are what they were last weekend, then he's absolutely got that chance to be part of the conversation. So it's big, and it's big for so many reasons, but that's just one of them. We're unlikely talking about getting back into the SEC race, but to beat a ranked team, which I don't believe Barry Odom has done, and Drew Lock, and to beat a team that you think is going to finish with a winning record, which in a Power 5 conference, I don't think that's happened either. That's what's in front of Missouri, and I think that's what the curiosity is. The big curiosity is about this game.
I agree. A side story for this game that has the interest of fans, and I'm going to try to get him on the phone. I've a loaded phone slate for today. I have you, Asia Blackwell this afternoon. I'm trying to get Jerry Blanton, former Chief, Kendall Blanton's father, on the phone, and Kelly Bryant, the Clemson transfer quarterback who's visiting for Missouri this weekend. It's Missouri, Arkansas, and North Carolina, the three main teams for him. I give Barry Odom a ton of credit. I mean, when the joke with Mizzou fans this whole year has been, because they clearly are looking for a graduate transfer quarterback, is that, well, Jalen Hurts is an option, Kelly Bryant's an option, and you kind of look away laughing because those guys have the option of everyone in the country, essentially. And Barry Odom has gotten Bryant on campus for a visit now. So, and Missouri, North Carolina, Arkansas are the three main schools in contention for him. And if you were to tell me this was going to be a thing a couple of weeks ago, I would have laughed you off the phone and we would have had a shortened podcast. But I'm curious for your take. Obviously Chad Morris, the Arkansas head coach, recruited Bryant when he was the Clemson OC. And before he went to SMU, he has a long-standing relationship with him. UNC has Larry Fedora. They have, they've been down a little bit, but were pretty good under him a couple of years ago. My whole thing with Mizzou is that should Bryant come, he'd be the starter from the second he stepped on campus. If Alberto skips the NFL draft and comes back a year, they still bring back Jalen Knox, a couple of the young receivers, all three running backs, barring one of them barring Crockett gets hot late and leaves for the NFL. And they only lose two starters on the offensive line. This is a young defense that they're going to miss Terez Hall, Brandon Lee, and Terry Beckner next year, but there's not a lot that leaves the defense. I think that there's a lot to like about Missouri in a situation should you want to come here.
I like your argument. I do. I like it a lot, and of the schools that you mentioned, I think North Carolina's I wouldn't put a lot of faith in that one. I'm not sure if Larry Fedora is going to be there after this year, so they're having yet another disappointing season. No, I like this thought, and it's ripe for that kind of player to come in and take over next season. So we talk about perception and how important perception is in terms of just how you size up a game, but it's also important for the future of transfers and where they might end up, where they want to come to a place where they have a chance, they're going to play and they have the best chance of winning. And I like the scenario that you set up for Missouri next year. So who knows? That'd be pretty cool if it happened.
Yeah, and Arkansas and North Carolina, I think, are the two programs that are kind of in rebuilding mode, as you said, or I don't really what to call North Carolina, because as you said, they've been disappointing, but there's not really any signs of I don't really see a light at the end of the tunnel with them right now. Missouri's kind of the school that's not in that situation. And, I thought for next year that without Drew and Emmanuel Hall and a couple of other guys, maybe that they just try to get to a bowl game and claw their way to 6-6. You put Kelly Bryant running that offense, maybe they can get 7-8 wins and not really show much of a downward step in what was looked at as a transition year for Barry Odom.
We'll see. We'll see. They've got
early.
More
it's early for sure.
It's early. Then there's more immediate needs right now, and the best thing that Missouri can do is to do everything possible to finish this year off strong, and that begins on Saturday.
Yeah. Before I let you go and get a prediction out of you, last thing I was going to touch on you with was Asia Blackwell committing to Missouri last night. 5-star recruit out of St. Louis for Robin Pinchton. Daughter of Ernest Blackwell, who I'm sure you covered.
Oh yeah.
Probably both at the Chiefs and with Mizzou. Top 10 player nationally for her. It's the biggest recruit Missouri's landed since Sophie Cunningham committed. And my whole curiosity is people have said Robin Pinchton could leave for another job in a couple years or because she's done so well at Missouri, and I've always kind of struggled to wrap my head around that argument because she already has Missouri as a borderline top 10 program nationally, and I mean you're never going to be as good as UConn, Stanford, Tennessee, Notre Dame. There's 8 schools with some wiggle room for some 2 or 3 of them with where you are in women's basketball because they always say with college sports your history is what you are. So and the schools I just mentioned, I don't think Robin Pinchton will really have a shot at those jobs whenever they become open because she has no ties to Tara Vanderveer or the West Coast. She's from Iowa. She has no ties to UConn or Tennessee, of course, and those schools already probably have an idea for who they'd go in-house. Of the Midwest schools, Notre Dame, she's big on her faith and everything. I could kind of see that a little bit, but that's another one where there's a lineage of coaches that kind of came from that tree. And Texas and Paul are some of the main Midwest area schools. So I think that this commitment last night showed that she could get the big in-state recruits that she's missed on in years past, like Nafisha Collier, who's at UConn from St. Louis. And I think that she's kind of built to succeed for as long as she wants in Missouri now.
This is an interesting topic because we always think of what we're talking about in terms of football and men's basketball and how to build a championship level program for Missouri in a conference that's ridiculously difficult, almost across the board in all sports. So it was a great, terrific get for Robin Pinchton in that program. You got to tip the hat to the staff that made it happen, and maybe Asia can be a transformational player. You can do, I think that's more possible in women's basketball than it is on the men's side. You can see where one player with complementary teammates can really do wonders for a program. So we'll have to see. I think when you think about a coach like Robin Pinchton, the question that she'll ask herself is there the commitment at Missouri, financial commitment to make the program, to allow the program with good coaching to play at the national level, to be a Final Four contender. And I think that's the threshold that coaches want to cross. Is everybody wants to? They're not necessarily looking at programs that have the best resumes, the best history, but in the current climate, are there programs that are willing to commit the resources to make it happen? And I don't get the sense that that's not the case at Missouri. That they'll do what it takes to make Mizzou competitive. And if you're competitive in the SEC, then you're obviously competitive nationally. And I think if you finished 4th, 5th, 6th in the SEC, you can get to the Final Four from that position. And you're right. The women's basketball game has been dominated by a handful of programs. Notre Dame won it last year, and Connecticut wins it almost every. And I guess those are the 2 that are up there at the top this year. But there's room. There is room for others who commit to it and are want to be good at it. And this is a really good sign for Missouri.
I would agree. I'm just curious, since I said you had covered Ernest Blackwell before. Obviously, it was a tragic end for him. But what do you remember about him as a pro athlete? Barry Odom said today that he was one of the most gifted athletes he ever saw play football.
I do not remember much as a pro. There wasn't much of a pro career for Ernest Blackwell. My memories of him were at Missouri, and he was tough as nails. He was a terrific athlete. In fact, when I started hearing about his daughter, I couldn't believe that that he had he was as old as he was, because it just seems like it just seems like just a few years ago he was playing college football, and for him to be that old makes me feel really, really old. But if she's got his genes, and she is, and obviously she's well on the way to being a great athlete. Didn't her team, did they win the state last year, or?
I think so. They came very close, if they didn't. They were in the Final Four.
They were in the Final Four, right? They were in Columbia's, I think.
Yes.
But no, he was quite the athlete, but again, I just don't remember him as a pro, and I know he was with the Chiefs, but I just don't remember the pro years for him.
Gotcha. Fun fact, KC Star connection to the Blackwell family. Our own Jontay Porter played high school basketball with, I forget if it was Ernest's older or younger brother, but he knows the Blackwells really well, and he played basketball in high school with one of Ernest's brothers. Toriano knows everybody.
Yeah, he does. He absolutely does. Yes, that is. He knows everybody in St. Louis and Kansas City. That's what's amazing.
Yeah, he grew up down the street from Mario McKinney's father. He's been bigger for me for source building than I can do on my own. I just play his name and I'm in the door. I just got to start dressing like him. Will I see you Saturday, or am I getting Blair, or am I getting Vahe or Mellinger?
We're still working that out. But you're going to get one of us, that's for sure.
Okay, I will leave you guys to draw straws on that one. I don't know if that was finalized yet.
Yeah. So, all right. So you ready for your trivia question?
Yes, I was going to say before. Give me my trivia question, then we can end on making predictions.
All right. Let's. This easy one for you. This is a slam dunk, and it's SEC related. So, Missouri has 3 all-time wins against Kentucky. And there are, so if Missouri ends up winning, that'll give them 4 wins, and they will join. Kentucky will join Florida, South Carolina, and Tennessee as programs Missouri has defeated 4 times. Not necessarily as SEC opponents, but just all time current SEC opponents that Missouri has defeated all time. That leaves 3 above that group that Missouri has more victories over. Now, they don't have to be in the SEC, but just all time. Can you name, I'll make it easy. Give me 2 of the 3 opponents that are currently in the SEC that Missouri has the most all-time victories against.
I'm going to say South Carolina, because they've had a history of them with bowl games. Is that one of them?
I will, when your answer is complete, I will tell you if you're correct or not.
Okay.
So I'm writing down. You have South Carolina.
Okay, South Carolina, Texas A&M. I think it's one because the Big 12 days. You have to name 3.
Yep. I'll give you. If you get 2 of them right, I'll call it correct. I'll put it this way. You're 1-1 right now.
Okay. So I got to hit on this last one. I'm going to say the last one. I don't know why I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say Alabama because I know they played a lot way back in the day, and maybe they got them a couple of times. But I'm not crazy about that answer, but I'm going to...
No, and you shouldn't be. So in all time in Missouri football history, they've beaten A&M 7 times, and you're right, it goes back to the Big 12 days.
12. Mm-hmm.
They have defeated 6 times each, Arkansas and Ole Miss. So
I thought about those too.
So it just always thought when Missouri went into the SEC, one of the things that it didn't have was history with a lot of the teams that are going to be playing every year, and this list kind of proves it. It's going to be another generation or so before you start feeling at least to me, feeling like these are the the hardy rivals, and they're trying to make it work with Arkansas, and I think with games like Kentucky where you get two good teams playing this weekend, and Vanderbilt over the years, it'll feel that way to younger fans of Missouri, but I know to the old crusty guys like me and others, it's just it's going to take some more time before it feels like these are the games that you look forward to every year just because of who the opponent is.
I thought a lot about saying Arkansas because, like South Carolina, Mizzou has some bowl history with them before the crossover. So
yeah,
that would have been I thought a lot about Ole Miss and Arkansas, but that you don't get points for that. Real quick, what's your game prediction?
Well, I'm going with the Tigers. I just am. Your last impressions are always you always feel good about them, and I like what I saw after they picked up the fourth down. This is a big game for Kentucky, though. I was reading some Kentucky stuff, and this is big. They love what's going on so far this season. They're already bowl eligible. They think they're in line for a nice bowl game. They're in the hunt for the SEC division title, but they're not 100% sure about their team. So I think there's I don't want to say Kentucky's been a mirage, but I don't think this is a team that's going to win the East Division, and I think their season's going to end up with three losses, maybe four. They got Georgia the week after this. I think this is a Missouri win. They find a way to get it done against the Kentucky defense. So I'm thinking something like 33-21, Missouri.
I'm not too far off. I don't want to predict a lot with the wideouts of who they are going to have and who they're not. Obviously, we root for the story. I think it would be an unbelievable story if Emmanuel Hall came back after losing his father and had a great second half to help them get hot. I think that Kentucky's offense is too limited to rely on the run, and if Missouri's able to shut down Benny Snell, they could maybe make it get pretty gory just because of the way their offense is and the limitations of Kentucky's own offense. So I'm going to say 37-24 Missouri just because I think it won't be as close as people might think. And also, Missouri got a little hosed at the end of last year's game with the runoff with the ref. Jamon Moore got the ball knocked out, and that really cost them a deep shot. And, some Missouri players have said that we're not really thinking about that. Others have said that it's very fresh in their minds that they didn't make enough plays, but they didn't get a real chance to see if they could win it. And I think back to you-know-what. So I think that they're going to really have some motivation between everything going into this game of a ranked team at home. It's Kentucky and not a regular power like Georgia or Florida. I think the opportunity is too much for them not to see. So I think I agree with you on Missouri.
So the season turns positive for the Tigers after the 3-game losing. I tell you what, though, if Missouri loses this game, I don't know what to think. I just don't. It'll be I don't know if colossal is the right word, but it'll be a major disappointment for the Tigers if they don't come out with a win this weekend.
I agree. To kind of give a Spark Notes version, I think win and 8-4 and 9-3 are on the table, and that shows that 8-4 shows improvement. 9-3, you talk contract extension. I think lose and you're looking at 7-5, and a very similar resume to last year's season. Not enough to fire Barry Odom and not enough to feel tremendously optimistic going forward either. So I think this win has a lot of implications for Odom and how they'll finish out and what that can mean for him. We went long today, but we had a lot to talk about. So he's Blair Kerkhoff. I'm Alex Schiffer. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next week to talk everything from Saturday's game and looking ahead to my first trip to the Swamp.